Welcome to the Fox and Fish podcast, your home for everything spooky, creepy, and horrifying. I'm Kirrianna, also known as the Fox.
And my name is Phinn, also known as the Fish. This is our very first episode, and yeah, like Kirrianna said, this is all things spooky, creepy, and horrifying. So here's how this podcast is going to work. Each episode, we're going to switch off, and one of us is going to do some deep dive style research into some kind of topic of interest that has to do with the spooky, creepy, or horrifying. And for the first episode, I don't know how we ended up with me, but I got the first episode, so I'm doing probably my personal favorite cryptid, the Mothman.
I think we ended up with you doing Mothman because I was crippled by indecision.
That's probably true. That sounds about right. So this is our first podcast, so sorry if it's all over the place. Also, this research was all over the place. This took me to places I didn't even know I was gonna go to. Like, I had, I don't know how many tabs open at one point, watching a video on one tab, and then, like, looking up fucking Men in Black shit on the other tab. I'm not even joking. It ended there. Yeah.
Men in Black?
Yeah.
Oh, the places you'll go when you fall down the Mothman rabbit hole.
Or just any kind of fucking rabbit hole on the internet.
Fair enough.
Especially when we're talking about cryptids. So yeah, I did a bunch of research. Kirrianna has not done any research. She has been chilling and playing Cyberpunk. That's about it.
I'm going in blind.
And that's how each episode's going to go. So for the next one, she's going to research something. I don't know if you got onto a topic yet. I know you were talking about skinwalkers.
I'm heavily considering skinwalkers. I want to do them justice because they're based in Native American lore, and I don't want to contribute to the mischaracterization of that culture. But
that's fair, yeah.
If I could do it justice, I would love to do it.
I am excited for that because I love skinwalkers. So a funny thing that happened while I was doing the research is I was asking Kirrianna, I was like, do you think there's people out there around like our age group or something that isn't aware of the Mothman? Because especially to me, like, I grew up in Ohio. I was maybe 4 or 5 hours away from Point Pleasant, where the Mothman incident was, like, really big. And I was wondering, like, are there people who are just normies that don't know anything about cryptids and don't know the Mothman? The very next day, I forgot to tell you this, I went to my therapy appointment and I was talking to my therapist about, like, starting up this podcast, and she has no idea who the Mothman is.
Wow, really?
No idea. And my grandma also, which, like, that kind of makes some sense.
Yeah.
But she grew up in West Virginia.
Wow, yeah, and she was around for that.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's become such a, I mean, you know, internet culture and cryptids are hand in hand.
Yeah, it's kind of a niche
with our
area, sort of.
Yeah,
but yeah,
a little bit.
But she does know about the bridge.
Oh, the bridge collapse?
Yes.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
So if you don't know about the Mothman, I have a little intro. We have like a table of contents thing. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about a couple of things that I remember watching a documentary on the Mothman like 10 to 15 years ago. And they talked about the Mothman in the 1800s in the West. I could not find that, but there is at least one 1800 sighting in Russia.
In Russia?
Yes.
Really?
During a war between the Russians and the Turkish.
I always, for some reason, thought Mothman was a, like, exclusively American thing.
Me too, but no.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so we're going to get in some weird places. But there was also, in that documentary, the Mothman had this weird connection with this guy in Point Pleasant, in specific, who, if I remember correctly, like, he was having visions of the bridge collapse, like, 3 days before it collapsed.
Interesting.
And, like, he was, like, it kind of, like, took over his life for a little bit. I couldn't find that documentary anywhere. I could not figure out where it was. I think it was on the History Channel. I don't know.
Oh, what a shame. That sounds hella intriguing.
I know. I am so mad that I couldn't find it, but I'm also glad that I didn't because I found a lot of other shit. So, if you don't know who the Mothman is, the Mothman is a cryptid that was seen from November 1966 to December 1997, or 1967, sorry, not 97, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And coincidentally, I also found out that this is around the same time as the Patterson Bigfoot video. If you know that one, it's like the really, really famous, like super clear Bigfoot footage of like the Bigfoot like walking across a field or whatever.
I'm very familiar with that footage, actually.
Yeah, this is around the same exact time, which is just a weird coincidence, but I thought it was fun to mention.
Yeah, that is cool. Kind of the advent of two huge cryptids.
Yeah, for real. And then, so the common description is he's about 6 to 7 feet tall. Some people will even say 8 or 9 feet tall.
Jesus.
With 7 being the most common, like he's taller than the average person. He has these giant wings that are 10 to 15 feet in wingspan from tip to tip. And this is obviously like, eyewitness accounts that, maybe aren't great at figuring out what length and, how to measure stuff just by eyeball.
Well, and especially because I'm sure you're not just like, chilling, looking at his measurements.
Yeah.
I'm sure most people would freak out. He sounds huge.
He's huge. He's got a slim but muscular body with dark grayish fur, but the most prominent feature that you always hear in a Mothman sighting is he has these glowing red eyes, which are sometimes even said to have like hypnotic, almost mind control effects, and a lot of times they give off a real sense of dread to the people.
Interesting.
So people will, like, that's what they'll focus on is the eyes, and they'll say that they were very hypnotic and almost like completely like takes away any features that they could see. Like he doesn't, almost like a featureless face. The only thing they can focus on is these giant black or these giant red glowing eyes.
I can imagine. Well, yeah, that'd be.
And these eyes are gonna come back too. They're doing some weird shit to the people. I'm not even gonna lie.
Interesting. Okay.
He also is supposed to be an extremely fast flyer, going at about 100 miles an hour in some of these stories.
I have heard he's a fast flyer, but 100 miles an hour?
100 miles an hour. We'll get to that in the big sighting, the one that really like took Point Pleasant by storm, because there's a couple other sightings of the Mothman before this big one, but the big one is where we get the actual speed is like clocked.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember hearing some eyewitness accounts of him like keeping up with cars.
Yep.
Which, I mean, 100 miles per hour, yeah, that makes sense. That's insane.
I went through, so when I first heard that, I was like, this is in the 60s. Like, are cars going that fast? And I actually researched, I figured out which car that person was driving in that big, like, that first encounter. And I went to an automobile website and started typing in, like, the brand of the car. And yes, it can reach up to 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
Or more.
Okay, I was just going to say, is that max speed, or? I
think it was, like, it could get a little bit past that, but 100 is, like, probably the safest max speed, so to speak.
Yeah.
Also, another weird thing about the Mothman that doesn't always come up, but he has these weird sounds. He makes, like, weird chirping, squeaking sounds that some people would say kind of sounds like a mix between a mouse and, like, a old, broken kind of record player. So that's kind of weird. He apparently was gonna be named Batman when he was like first coming to fruition there, but obviously Batman already exists. So they ended up going with Mothman based on the killer moth villain from the Batman comics, which that's kind of funny.
That is really funny. Why were they gonna go with Batman?
I think it's just because his, like, when you hear or like read these eyewitness accounts, it's very bat-like. Like they talk about bat-like wings. His wings apparently like fold in on him. There are a couple of eyewitness accounts where it's like they thought it was just a big dude in like a trench coat or something. Like the wings don't, like, they're not just there. They like fold around him, and then he like opens them up and they look like bat wings. I think also the fact that a lot of the times seems to be he's seen at night. And he also, like, the chirping noises kind of puts me into, like, this idea of a bat. I don't think moth makes any noises, do they?
Not that I know of.
I mean, they might, but, like, it's probably, like, noise that humans could never comprehend.
Yeah,
so.
Probably. I could see that.
Although maybe if you scale it up, who knows?
Who knows, yeah.
Mothman is also tied to the Silver Bridge collapse. It connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio. That bridge collapsed on December 15th of 1967. I have it written as 1997. I need to fact check my notes more, or just, proofread them more. That collapse unfortunately killed 46 people. And one theory suggests that the Mothman legend may have been intentionally exploited to divert attention away from the event. I don't think that's true. I think that's kind of stupid. But we can talk about that at the end when we're talking about our theories and, things like that.
I didn't know the bridge collapse had that many casualties.
Yeah, 46, maybe more. I've heard some people say that there was these many people got crushed and then these many people drowned, but the number that I've heard the most is 46.
No wonder your mom knew about it. That's
grandma.
Or yeah, your grandma.
Yeah, she knew about that bridge collapsing, that's for sure.
That's a big event. That's a lot of lives lost. That's crazy.
After that, Mothman seemed to have just disappeared, which is kind of weird. It's, again, speculated whether he was part of it or he was trying to warn people. Again, we can get into that a little bit later. But there's also, that's why I don't agree with this idea that he was intentionally exploited to divert attention away. Because once that happened, that's where all the attention was, is that bridge. He ended up becoming a local legend, kind of like an icon in Point Pleasant. There is a Mothman festivals, there's a Mothman museum, there's that giant Mothman statue. I actually lived in Gallipolis for about 9 months. I visited Point Pleasant. I actually have a picture somewhere in the ether of data and cyberspace. There's a picture of me with that Mothman statue, which, by the way, for no reason at all, that statue is caked up, man. He's got an ass on him. He's shredded and everything.
He is. Oh my god.
It's so weird.
I think he looks like a Power Rangers villain.
A little bit. He kind of does. He also has a book that was written in 1975 by John Keel and a movie in 2002 directed by Mark Pellington. The movie has about a 6.4 on IMDb, and seems to be at least decently regarded, usually around a 50s to low 60s score. Had a box office of $55.2 million. I don't know what the budget was. I didn't look that up. The book, I was gonna see if I can get it, but it was $50. But it is pretty well rated with a 4.4 star out of 5 with over 2,000 reviews on Amazon.
Wow,
so,
I'd be curious to look into those. Are they biographical in nature, or do they kind of have their own fantasy storyline about it? Or
I think the book, from what I understand, the book is kind of how did you say that word?
I think it's biographical. I hope that's a real word.
I hope it is too. But yeah, the book seems to be a biography of Mothman. The movie seems to be based on it, but maybe it seems like it might have its own kind of stories. It seems kind of similar to a cryptid that I remember seeing a little while ago, the Boggy Swamp Monster or something like that, where
that sounds familiar.
It's the witness of accounts, but they're dramatized with TV and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, so that's the intro. We have a table of contents here, so I'm gonna just read off the names of these table of contents. 1, who the fuck is Injured Cold? We're gonna talk about him. He's a interesting little character.
I've heard of Injured Cold. I didn't know he was related to Mothman.
I've never heard of this guy, and he's...
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember shit about him.
Oh, you're gonna hear some stuff.
Oh, I'm curious.
I had to really condense some of this stuff down.
I'm sure.
We got the original sighting, the first sighting that made the newspaper, which that's a different sighting. There's 3 sightings before the newspaper sighting that I was able to find. The effects on the city, and then the I can't even talk right now. The later sightings that happened. The bridge collapse, potentially earlier sightings. So I talked about the 1800s. We got 2 sightings, one from the 1800s and one from the 1920s. And that one is in China.
What?
Yeah. Mothman was chilling in China in the 20s, apparently. And then we also have modern day sightings, which is in a very interesting place. Some of them are as early as 2022, I think.
Really?
In a completely different state. not too far away, but a different state. And then we're just going to talk about what is the Mothman, some theories that I've found, some of which I think are kind of stupid, but, you know, we can discuss those and figure out what we think about the Mothman.
Yeah.
So, who the fuck is Indrid Cold?
Yeah, who the fuck is Indrid Cold?
I still don't fully know. He has a whole thing, apparently, that's not just tied to the Mothman. On November 2nd in 1966, a man named Woodrow Derenberger... By the way, I'm gonna butcher names. I can't pronounce shit, as you can already tell. I barely even speak English. But he was driving through the Point Pleasant area at the World War II TNT place, which is where Mothman is kind of like always seen. It's this TNT like facility that was used in World War II to make bombs and stuff. And apparently they just kind of like covered it with dirt when they were done with it, which is not a good way.
Amazing explosive containment.
Yeah. Apparently it actually did contaminate that area, which is part of the theories of what Mothman actually is. So Woodrow Derenberger was driving through this area when he sees a craft parked in the middle of the road, like a spacecraft type deal.
Like a alien spacecraft?
I guess. It was just described as a craft.
Okay.
He gets out of his car and he starts to investigate when the door to this craft opened up and this guy walked out. And Woodrow described him as a man of average height and build with dark hair. He seemed completely normal, except he had this big, weird, unnatural grin on his face. Like he was just this big, creepy smile. This man, telepathically apparently, told Woodrow that his name was Indrid Cold, and he was from a planet called... I don't even know how to pronounce this word.
Lanulus?
Yeah, Lanulus is how I've heard it pronounced, but it's weird. Some planet, apparently. And Indrid apparently visited Woodrow multiple times over the next few years. That same night, two men were visited by the same guy in the same craft, asking strange questions, and another woman sees the craft land in a parking lot she was at, where two men came out and started asking her strange questions.
Okay, yeah, that's starting to ring some bells, because I remember hearing something about a smiling man that, like, telepathically communicated with people, and it was related to, like, UFO sightings. That is very interesting.
Yeah, Mothman is related to UFO sightings. He is often, like, people sometimes wonder if he is, like, an alien creature.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. So that's what I got on Indrid Cold as far as, like, relating him to Mothman.
It was just in the same area-ish around the same time?
The same area and the same time, because the first sighting of the Mothman that I could find was in November 1st, 1966. Just the day before this, a National Guardsman reported seeing a, quote, half-man, half-bird watching him from the trees. And apparently they locked eyes for a little bit, and then this thing just jumped up and flew away. That's the first, like, Mothman sighting that I could find that isn't from, like, the 1800s or something like that.
Okay, God, that's like a movie scene. That sounds creepy as hell.
It sounds really creepy. The first one that because that one's like, is it Mothman? It's just kind of in the same spot, and it's like half man, half bird. This one, in Clendenin?
Yeah, that is a weird name. Clendenin.
West Virginia. I grew up around that area, and I still can't pronounce shit. But in West Virginia, November 12th, in 1966, a man named Kenneth Duncan was with three other men digging a grave at a graveyard, apparently burying one of their own. I didn't know people did that. Is the 60s that much of a different time that we don't have people to, like, bury our loved ones?
I don't know much about when modern, like, burial practices started, but yeah, funerals and burying loved ones has changed a lot in very recent times, from what I understand.
But yeah, Kenneth was working, and apparently he just happened to look up, probably doing that thing where everyone does, where you're working real hard, and you just kind of like, and you look up, and he saw a large bird-like creature flying above him. This creature didn't flap their wings, hovered for a moment in the same spot, and then just flew off at like super high speeds, which sounds pretty much like the Mothman.
How close is Clendenin?
From what I understand, it is like a decent ways away. But if we're talking about something flying at like possibly 100 miles an hour,
not that far.
Not that far.
Okay.
But then we also have another one, November 14th, a guy named Merle Patrick. He was watching TV, and his TV started to get staticky and going in and out, which is another thing that I've seen a lot of cases with Mothman. Like, Mothman seems like wherever he goes, there's some kind of weird paranormal-y type stuff with, like, electricity getting all messed up and, like, TVs going staticky and stuff like that.
As if, like, his presence has some kind of, like, electromagnetic interference with, like,
possibly.
devices?
Possibly. At least with TVs. It seems to be a big thing.
Well, that was one of, like, I would imagine around this time, like, one of the most popular, like, in-home, you know, digital devices.
Oh,
save for, like, a radio.
Yeah. Especially in the 60s, like, there's not really any computers, so
yeah,
you're just watching TV. His dog, a German Shepherd, started to bark and growl at the door as if it wanted out, and eventually Merle opened the door, and this dog just shot out, and he grabbed a flashlight and tried to figure out where his dog went, and he saw the two large red eyes in the distance, and he tried to investigate. And apparently what happened was he was able to follow his dog's tracks. I think there was like some snow on the ground because it's in this November. And he found an area where it looked like his dog stopped and was like running in circles as if it was trying to get at something that it couldn't reach. And then the tracks just disappeared from there.
Oh, God.
And unfortunately, the dog was never found.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
Mothman took the doggo for a snack?
Possibly. It may have been found a little later, which we're going to talk about in like a second.
Oh my God.
Potentially, yeah. So the same night, potentially, I've heard November 14th and November 15th both being used. This was late at night, so it could have been like technically November 15th. But you know, like, we don't go to bed until like 3 or 4 in the morning, so it's still yesterday. But yeah, a few hours later, 100 miles away in Point Pleasant, this is where we get the first real sighting that made the newspaper. So Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallet? I don't know how to pronounce that name. I told you, I'm bad at this. They were driving past that same World War II TNT bunker area, and they saw this large 7+ foot tall creature with a slim muscular build, massive wings, and, quote, hypnotic red eyes. And the couple, obviously they were afraid, so they sped off. And the creature ran after them at first, and by all witnesses, they described it as a, quote, clumsy runner.
What?
He's not good on the ground.
So it's also just now kind of really hitting me that one of the other eyewitness accounts saw Mothman hover without flapping his wings, but now he's a clumsy runner.
Yeah, clumsy runner, by all accounts.
Okay.
So they sped off, and eventually the creature jumped into the air and began pursuing them in the air. Excuse me. The car. So this is where I looked it up. The car was a 57 Chevy Bel Air. And Roger reportedly got it up to 100 miles an hour on the speedometer. Like, he looked at the speedometer. So we're in, like, rural area in West Virginia. It's a long stretch of road. It's barely used. And they're in, like, the middle of the night. So it's a bare road. So this guy floors it.
Yeah, he's just
going.
barreling down a straight line.
I looked it up, and the car can get to that speed. It takes about 20 to 25 seconds, from what I understand, but it can get to that speed. The chase kept going until they got to like the city/town limits with more lights and more people. And at one point, they did supposedly see a large dead dog on the side of the road, and that is speculated to be the German Shepherd of Mr. Merle from earlier. The couples did eventually get into the city. The creature gave up pursuit, and they went directly to the police. Surprisingly, the deputy believed them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm sure they were, acting like terrified.
They definitely were, and also the deputy apparently knew them a little bit.
Oh, that helps,
we're
too.
talking about Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's a pretty small town.
Fair.
It's one of those like everybody knows everybody type things.
Yeah.
So they ended up going out and trying to investigate. They saw and heard a couple of weird things. They saw like a weird what was described as a hoof print, which is very strange.
From Mothman?
I don't know.
Assuming?
Yeah, it was described as a hoof print.
That would explain the
clumsy running.
Clumsy running, yeah, but hoofs?
I guess, yeah, I don't know.
This Mothman is sounding more and more like stereotypical demon.
That's
bat wings, hooves.
Yeah. Apparently they saw some shadows. One of them kicked in a door they went into the TNT area. One of them kicked in a door and apparently seen something like shooting up out of the ceiling, potentially. Mothman maybe taking off, I don't know. But they didn't see any Mothman. The story ended up making headline news, and the headline said, "Couple see man-sized bird, creature, something." And it was, yeah. It was published on November 16th of 1966 in the Point Pleasant Register. And this started a spark of people coming out and claiming their own witness reports. And this is where it got muddy. I could barely figure out, like, who was the first to see this and, like, what stories go where, because there are so many.
Yeah.
There are just we're talking hundreds. We're talking, like,
really?
Up to 5 reports a day with, like, up to 18 people seeing it.
Wow. And I feel like, I mean, obviously I have no real evidence for what I'm about to say. This is just speculation, but I feel like knowing small town people, like, it doesn't, like, stuff like that doesn't create as much, like, a fear of missing out as, like, more populated areas do. Because, like, you get into city people and, they see stuff like that, they want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Small town folk, I feel like, I'm sure there are some here and there that would have that reaction, but I feel like on the whole, to have that many eyewitness accounts, like, I don't feel like that's just, like, a natural reaction to that information.
Well,
as far as small town psychology goes.
Actually, this headline started a huge wave. Like, people were going after the Mothman.
Oh, really?
Like,
see, that
town.
I could see. That I could see them, like, gathering up like a freaking mob and grabbing a bunch of weaponry and flashlights and stuff to go try and find it.
Oh,
especially if it's, like, a perceived threat.
Matter of fact, I even have here, a week later, the National Guard was summoned to try to control the amount of people that kept flocking to that TNT area trying to find Mothman.
Wow.
It was a huge thing.
It was that big.
Yeah.
It's like the whole town just searching for Mothman.
Yep.
That's crazy.
It seemed like everyone in the fucking town wanted to know what he was, who he was, where it came from.
I don't blame him. I want to know too.
Yeah. So we get to the effects on the city and a couple other sightings. Marcella Bennett was visiting her boyfriend when she saw the Mothman, and this was like feet away. She was like feet away from this creature. She went out to her car and she saw the creature standing by her car. So, like, she was, like, the car was probably the only thing in between them at this point.
Oh, God.
And at first, she thought it was just a big guy in a trench coat. And then she looked at him, and she saw those bright, glowing red eyes, and she was frozen, completely hypnotized. Her brother, who saw the incident, was yelling at her, like, get inside, come on. And she just couldn't move. It eventually got to the point where she finally did start moving. She was so afraid, she stumbled, dropped her child on the ground, and her brother had to run out and, like, grab both of them and get them inside. And apparently after this, they heard the Mothman trying to get into the house. Like, it was banging on the door. Apparently tried the doorknob at one point.
What?
Yeah. So, that's terrifying. Motherfucker can use doors.
No.
Yeah, this was a crazy story. And apparently she needed therapy after her encounter. Like, it scarred her for, like, most of her life. Linda Scarberry, the first person who was among the 4 people in the car with that first encounter, she reported seeing the creature multiple times, including once right outside her apartment window.
Oh my god! So it's like kind of stalkerish vibes right now.
A little bit. What's interesting to me is in that first encounter, the creature stopped pursuing them when they got towards the town limits. Like when they got to the point where like there's like more lights and stuff. But there also are reports of him, like, outside of people's apartments. Just, like, standing outside of their windows or, like, you know, like, waiting by the car. Trying to, you know...
That I didn't know.
Get people. I don't know.
Which is so interesting because it's... From what it sounds like she was just moseying on to her car or, like, interacting with her brother or whatever.
Yep.
And
with
then,
her daughter in her arms. Yep.
And then Mothman is just there.
Yeah, he's just standing there.
How does something that big... not create noise?
That's what's weird is the only noise, because I was purposefully looking for this to see, like, no eyewitness accounts that I could find ever talk about hearing the Mothman flapping his wings.
Really? Not a single one?
I couldn't find a single one. Because that's something like I've, like with other cryptids, is you, like, winged cryptids especially, people talk about hearing, you know, I've heard giant wings flapping and stuff.
Yeah.
I couldn't find anyone talking about the Mothman flapping his wings and, like, making a sound.
Did you see examples of people reporting his wings moving? Like in a flapping motion as he's flying?
Sometimes, a lot of them, they'll say, like, he would flap his wings a little bit, but he's mostly gliding. There is a video, I did show you the video of what may have been the Mothman flying, but that thing looked like a fucking dragon to me.
Yeah, it did. It really did. Or
but
a
yeah.
pterodactyl or something.
So,
but that was flapping its wings, if that was...
It was.
What we attribute to Mothman sightings.
Yeah. So the whole town seemed to want to find Mothman, and even people who weren't looking for him would apparently see him. I also have here that the Gettysburg Times reported 8 additional sightings in the span of 3 days after that first claim. And this also included 2 volunteer firefighters who said they saw, quote, a very large bird with large red eyes. Also, witnesses reported to having weird thoughts, strange dreams, and even prophecies that seemed to come true after seeing the Mothman. Interesting.
So you've got this strange hypnotic sound. You've got reports of his eyeballs being like this, having this
hypnotizing,
weird hypnotic thing to them. And then you've got people having like prophetic dreams?
Yeah. And that's also part of the documentary that I remember watching 10 to 15 years ago, where this guy was like just kept having weird dreams and like a lot of dreams and prophecies about the Mothman. And if my brain serves me correctly, it doesn't always, but if my brain remembers correctly, I think he actually knew the bridge was going to collapse.
Really?
I remember that being a part of that documentary.
Oh, it's a shame that you couldn't find that. That sounds crazy interesting.
Oh, yeah. So then we get to the bridge collapse. So these reports, this is why I couldn't, because this is a whole year. So the first sighting was in November 2nd, or November 1st, actually, with that National Guardsman. The first big sighting in November 15th of 1966. And then we hit December 15th of 1967, exactly 13 months later.
Oh, wow, okay.
The Silver Bridge, which connects Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed during rush hour at 5 p.m. So this is like everyone's out. We're getting close to the holidays. People are Christmas shopping. They're getting off work, especially at 5 o'clock, and like rushing home or rushing to the store to get some, gifts and stuff. 46 people lost their lives due to being crushed or drowning in the waters. So the bridge was built in the 1920s after a doctor wanted a better way to cross the water in order to get to his patients. I don't remember the name of the doctor. I should have written it down. That's my bad. But apparently this guy, he was a doctor in the 20s, and he had to cross the bridge, the Ohio River. Not the bridge, because there was none then at that point. He had to cross the Ohio River, and apparently it would take too long, and his patients would start dying.
Ooh.
So he wanted a way to cross that river in a quicker and safer way.
Yeah.
So the bridge was built, but it wasn't built very well.
It wasn't like to code, if they even had a code back then.
Yeah. So the way it was designed was like really, it was just not great. If one part failed, there was like basically nothing to prevent the other parts from failing.
Oh, Lord.
So one little thing goes wrong and the whole bridge is completely collapsing at that point, which is exactly what happened.
And you're talking like from the 20s to the late 60s. No wonder something happened.
Yeah. Also at that point in the 20s, your standard Model T cars weighed in at about 1,500 pounds. And in the 60s, the average weight of a car was around 4,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So we got a lot of stress on it, especially, it's December, rush hour time. There's a bunch of people on it.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening was an I-beam cracked, and it was on the Ohio side, apparently. And then the chain snapped, and then the bridge just fell to pieces.
Oh God, that sounds terrifying.
Also, apparently there were inspections that were really sketchy and was sometimes literally a single person standing with binoculars from a distance just looking at it.
Oh wow.
That was the whole inspection.
There wasn't even like they didn't go and test it or
nope, they didn't
anything?
even. I mean, some people, like, at some points maybe, but there were some inspections that was just a dude standing on the side of the road, binoculars, like, yep, looks good.
Wow.
Okay, dude. Okay, sure. The day of the bridge collapse, people were calling in, though, and reported seeing Mothman circling the bridge all day.
Really?
Just flying overhead.
I thought he was just seen, like, on the bridge or something. I didn't know that, like, he was circling it like a vulture.
Yeah, also, about a week before this, there was a picture. You can find it on Google Images. Just look up Mothman Bridge. Or Mothman on bridge or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there is a picture where it's of the bridge and you can see what looks like Mothman just kind of chilling on the bridge, like kind of hanging off of it.
Wow.
And then
like a bat.
Kind of. He's actually more like he's like kind of like holding on to it, like he's not hanging upside down.
Oh,
he's like
okay.
It almost looks like he's climbing it or something.
Interesting.
Or like he's inspecting the bridge. Maybe he's trying to do a better job. I don't know. He's like, look, guys, you suck. I'll handle this. And yeah, that was taken about a week before the incident. But yeah, he was circling that bridge apparently all day that day, and there was just calls flooding in, like, there's this creature flying over the bridge. I don't know what it is.
Well, I can imagine, especially if you've got that much traffic. Like, that's crazy, dude.
Oh yeah. And then after this, Mothman sightings just screeched to a halt. No one in Point Pleasant's talking about the Mothman anymore. No one's seeing him anymore. It's like he just dipped out of there.
Wow.
Now, obviously, that could be because you have this tragedy that just killed a bunch of people and people are no longer thinking about it.
Yeah, it just kind of overshadows all that tragedy.
But yeah, that's really crazy, though, that it just stops. I would imagine, like, there would be a couple of sightings.
Yeah.
There is one that we're going to get into.
Okay.
In 2016, actually.
Really?
Yes.
2016?
Yep.
Okay.
It also comes with a picture, but we can't do that in podcast form, so.
Unfortunately.
But first, I want to talk about some earlier sightings in history. 1854 to 1856 in Russia.
What?
Yeah. The Crimean War, I think is what it's called.
I believe it's pronounced Crimean, but I am not a history buff.
That could be. I'm not that big on history myself. Russia versus Turkey. So March 15th was seen as an unlucky day to do battle. There was something weird, some superstitions about it. So there was an agreement that was made on both sides to not fight on this day because it was seemed unlucky for some whatever reason.
Interesting.
I think it was called like the Odd March or something like that. I don't remember.
Huh. Now I want to do an episode just on that.
Yeah, for real. So Turkish soldiers, though, they decided they're going to honor this treaty, but they're going to sneak their way over to the Russians' area. So on midnight, once it's no longer March 15th, they're going to ambush.
Oh, sneaky.
I appreciate the hustle.
Yeah. I like that. We're technically gonna do what we said.
Yeah, we're not gonna fight you or anything. We're just gonna set up.
Yeah.
So they were trying to sneak into the Russian camps, and on their way, they saw a large Birdman-like creature circling them with big red eyes. Wings not flapping either. He's just gliding around.
No shit.
Yeah. And obviously the soldiers, they're fucking creeped out, and they decided to just abandon ship. So they start going back, but apparently the Turkish people on their side thought that they were Russians trying to do the same thing that the Turkish soldiers were trying to do. So it ended up having like a weird fight between them. And on the Russian side, they heard the Turkish soldiers screaming, and they ended up also seeing the Mothman in the sky as well. And apparently the Turkish believed that it was the Russians that did this, and there was some retaliation shots fired the next day.
Wow.
So that kind of sounds like Mothman, you know, this big bird creature flying around, wings not flapping or anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like, if we really wanted to stretch it too, you can honestly say, like, well, war is a tragic event.
True.
Like,
true, if he's a harbinger of disaster.
Yeah. Speaking of which, China, 1920s. China. So one thing to note about Mothman is he's often seen either around water or a place of disaster. There are a couple of places where water is not, where I've seen stuff about Mothman where water isn't a part of it, but disaster is. For this, you got two. I am going to butcher this name. I can't speak Chinese. Or the Zhanti Dam, maybe? Question mark?
Oh, you got me. I
don't even know if that's how it's spelled. I heard it said. I didn't see it spelt out. I'm going to have all of my sources in the description of this podcast, by the way, and that's going to be a common theme for the podcast. We're also going to have some socials and stuff we'll talk about at the end. So the Zhanti Dam collapsed in the 1920s, and it spilled 40 million gallons of water onto farmlands and killed 15,000 people.
Oh my god.
And during this time, there were reports of a large, shiny, but dark creature flying overhead with large wings and glowing red eyes. In China, though, he was dubbed as the Man Dragon.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And there's apparently quite a few reports of this too. Like I said, I had to condense a lot of this down.
Wow.
But there are just some things I needed to talk about.
That is a crazy big disaster. Huge.
So then we get to the 1926 to 1995 in Cornwall. There was a headline, maybe not a headline, but a part in the Cornwall Echo paper of these two boys who were chased by a, quote, large ferocious bird. And in the 70s to the 90s, there's just a bunch of different large Birdman figures flying overhead being sighted. And there's a new report in this one where this creature has pincers instead of hands.
What the fuck?
And this one's kind of weird because is it a different creature? Is it a different Mothman? Because also the timelines are overlapping at this point. We have from the 70s to the 90s, but we'll also have like from 1926 to 1995, which is conflicting with the 1960s Point Pleasant incident.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a different Mothman or just what's going on there, but
well, I
guess that
depends on if Mothman is a physical entity or a spiritual entity or somewhere in between.
I remember talking to one of my friends when we were doing this podcast, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing one we're gonna do the first one on the Mothman. Like, I'm really excited. It's one of my favorite cryptids." And she had done a whole paper on the Mothman for like school.
Oh, that's cool.
And she apparently said that there is a different thing between the Mothman and Mothmen.
Oh.
I don't know. That's a weird one.
I had never heard of that. Okay.
Me neither.
For some reason I was under the impression that this was just one entity.
Me too. Germany, 1978.
What the fuck skinwalkers flying all over the goddamn globe.
It's a busy, busy boy. This one, though, is incredible.
How so?
So, they called him the Feuerberg Shrieker, or the Fireberg Shrieker.
Interesting.
So, 36 miners were outside waiting to clock into work. They're getting ready to go into work. They approached the entrance.
Miners as in, like, mining
mining for like,
minerals and shit?
Minerals, not like underage people.
Okay, yeah.
Very big difference there.
Well, and especially because, I mean, you know, child labor laws didn't come into effect until somewhat recently, I would assume. So.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about, you know, different cultures, who knows.
Yeah.
So they start going into the mine when they saw a figure standing in the mine that seemed to be like a big guy wearing a coat.
Okay.
Just like the Mothman sightings. Yeah. They approached trying to figure out, like, hey, what's going on? You need some help? Like, get out of there. It's kind of a dangerous place. This figure, quote, opened up his coat and shrieked at them.
Oh my god.
Like, screaming at them.
Babadook status, dude.
Yeah. They all took off.
As I would as well.
And they started doing other things. They just started, like, cleaning up around the mine area to like, because, you know, they can't really leave work.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to be in there with that. And at some points, I guess a couple of them were like, you know, hey, go see if it's still there. And, yeah, they just never went into the mines after that.
I wouldn't. God.
They then reported hearing an explosion in the mine. And the mine fucking collapses.
Oh my god.
If they would have been in the mine at that point, they would have been dead.
Yeah, they would have all been crushed, I would assume.
Yeah, crushed or just trapped and starved to death or dying of dehydration.
Oh my god.
So the Mothman maybe saved the lives of these 36 people?
Yeah, maybe his shriek was like a stay away, it's not safe here.
That's kind of what it sounds like. It's another important thing to note that Linda Scarberry, I think her name was, the first person that was a part of that 4 in the car. Mm-hmm. She reported seeing the Mothman multiple times, and there's a little video. Again, all of this is going to be, like, the sources are going to be in the description. You can check them all out. There's a little video where these 2 guys were, like, talking to her and asking, like, you know, you must have been pretty afraid. And she's like, yeah, I was at first, but now I don't really think so, because he's had so many chances to, like, do something. Oh, and, like, he hasn't. You know, like, he had, like, the worst he's done is, you know, maybe take a couple dogs, which, you know, that's still really bad. Yeah. You know, shame on you, Mothman, but, you know, he hasn't hurt any people.
Yeah. And
this seems like, you know, he really is, like, fulfilling this harbinger kind of, like messenger status of, like, trying to warn people of danger.
Interesting. And he requires dog sacrifices for his aid.
Maybe it's just like his food source.
Yeah, you know?
Who knows? I don't know.
That's crazy, though. So did anything bad ever happen to her? Any kind of tragedy befall her later in her life?
Not that I've found. That video that I just talked about, she's, like, way older. She's, like, you know, probably in her 70s or 80s in that video.
Oh, wow.
And she seemed perfectly fine. Like, you know, doesn't seem like anything happened.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that's just, like, he was in that area to warn of the bridge, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe he just thought she was pretty.
Maybe. Here we go. Mothman has been reported seeing during/around the times of 9/11.
9/11?
Chernobyl.
What?
The I-35 bridge collapse as well. I forget where that's at. I should have written that down. And the Mexican swine flu outbreak.
I had no idea about any of those.
Me neither. There's a picture of Mothman flying around the frickin' Twin Towers.
Are you serious?
I showed you that picture. That's the picture.
Oh, that's that. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay, yeah.
Chernobyl is a really interesting one. I wanted to put more into this. I'll just talk about what I can remember. Apparently, they started seeing this, what they described as a giant Batman creature flying around. And apparently, people started having really bad dreams and visions. It was messing with a bunch of, like, the electrical stuff. The phones would ring, but they would pick it up and it'd be nothing but static on the other side. Like, a lot of weird paranormal stuff going on. And then, like, yeah, obviously we know how the Chernobyl incident went. Like, not very good for any of those people.
No.
And yeah, apparently Mothman was there trying to warn him, maybe.
That's crazy.
Then we also got the last sighting that I could find from Point Pleasant, which is in 2016. An anonymous man, he wants to remain anonymous. I couldn't find his name anywhere, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't put it in here for his own sake. He was driving around Point Pleasant when he spotted a large bird-like figure jumping from tree to tree, and the man got out of his car and photographed the creature. Skeptics do believe it's a Photoshop type deal. You can find that picture really easy if you just like Google Mothman 2016 photo. It looks pretty good in my opinion, but you know, who knows? Skeptics are going to be skeptics. It's obviously possible, especially in 2016, to Photoshop something like that. I will admit it does seem like a little bit too perfect of a photo.
Yeah.
Like it's very zoomed in and it looks really clear. If this creature is actually flying around, moving, that's going to be a difficult photo to take.
Yeah, unless you have like an expensive ass DSLR, you ain't getting a shot like that.
Yeah, and you have like perfect hands. Like
yeah.
So, modern day sightings. Where do you think Mothman is right now? Where do you think he's chilling?
Oh, he's been all over, so I fucking have no idea.
Chicago.
He want that deep dish.
He wants that deep dish. I've been to Chicago once and I've had some deep dish pizza. Oh my god. It's a lot of cheese, but if you like cheese, it's really good.
I like cheese.
A USPS worker in Chicago, she was working in a building across from the O'Hare Airport. I think it's what it is. O'Hare. The International Airport in Chicago. I'm sorry, I'm bad at words. She had...
So is the English language is bad at words. It's not your fault.
That's facts. She has an extremely long, detailed testimony. I couldn't even put it all in here.
Oh, wow.
It a lot. Like, she goes into deep detail about everything she possibly can. And over 25 reports at the airport alone in 2022.
Do you remember kind of like a general overview of what her testimony was? Like, what happened to her?
There was a lot that I found. There was a couple different ones, so I'm not sure which one is her. Because I tried to like look into some of it, but I didn't realize there was so many.
Yeah, that's a lot.
From this like person, or not person, but from this like building, like people that work in this building and people that work at the airport. Okay. Like there are people. Some of them are as simple as like, I saw this big flying creature with red eyes, circling the airport. I think if I remember correctly, this one was similar to the woman with her brother, where she was walking and she saw the Mothman like in the parking lot or something. Okay. I'm pretty sure. Or that could be another one. Like I said, there was quite a few testimonies. There's a video that talks about a lot of the incidences at Chicago. So you obviously, you can look those up if you want. I'm going to have that video linked. This guy talks a lot about the Chicago incidences, and they all seem to be coming from very credible people. That's another thing, is that it's at the international airport, and there's like, people who could lose their jobs over, sounding crazy or weird or something.
Reporting Mothman sightings.
Yeah, reporting the Mothman, this big creature with glowing red eyes flying around, just causing mayhem or whatever. So yeah, over Chicago, from 2011 to 2021, there were hundreds of reports, like from seemingly credible people. We're talking like, firefighters. We're talking people that work at the airport. We're talking about, USPS, like, people that work across from this airport. A lot of them around the airport, which is concerning.
Yeah, if you see Mothman before like major tragedy, you do not want to see him at an airport.
Not at all. I could not find anything about like a plane going down that took off from Chicago around this time.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, was like, what happened to this airport? There
are two main sources I want to point out that are going to be in the description of this podcast. Like I said, maphub.net Mothman sightings. You can see a bunch of them that were, there's even like a couple, I think it was in like Indiana or Illinois and shit like that too, around the same area or around the same time. And then the website Phantoms and Monsters has like a whole timeline of like Chicago sightings from 2011 to 2017. But I have found some that was like as recent as like 2021, 2022.
That's crazy that there are that recent of sightings.
Yeah. Like,
and that there's it seems like there's such a gap in between sightings, but when a lot of sightings seem to happen, it's like tons of people.
Yeah, like the Chernobyl one, that was like for weeks, apparently. People were just constantly like seeing this thing, having all these weird experiences, like I said, the phone calls, like where the phone rings, no one's there, and it's just like static. People having weird dreams, people having like these weird thoughts and feelings in general.
Which is so crazy, because I remember going down a Chernobyl rabbit hole, just about like the nuclear issues itself. I didn't see anything about the Mothman stuff, and now it makes me want to go down that new sub-rabbit hole.
There is some thoughts where like some people are talking about whether or not that kind of stuff actually happened. The Twin Towers, the 9/11 one, there is a photo of seemingly the Mothman. I don't know when it surfaced. I think it was around that time. But apparently, according to this one video I was watching where this girl basically did a similar thing with us, was like going down a Mothman rabbit hole. She said that apparently the Chernobyl sightings started picking up at around 2005 or so, where like people started bringing it up in 2005, or like that's when those sightings started surfacing. I'm not sure, but I did watch another video where it was he talked about them kind of briefly, but he actually talked about like the experiences that people were having up to the meltdown of the power plant.
Interesting. I don't remember when was Chernobyl? Was that in 2005?
No, that was like way earlier, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I thought so.
I'm pretty sure that's like I don't remember exactly when Chernobyl was.
I don't either. It's been a little while.
Yeah. So, what is the Mothman? So, here's some theories and whatnot that I found. Some people suggest this creature may have been a misidentified sandhill crane or heron?
A heron, yeah, I've heard that theory.
Yeah.
A lot.
They're known to migrate throughout the area. Apparently, they stand about as tall as the average man and has bright red flesh around its eyes. That doesn't explain the high-speed flying and the glowingness of the eyes. And also, like, the physique. Like,
yeah,
people are seeing a person.
Yeah, and they've got such a detailed description of, like, his build.
Yeah, like, skinny but muscular, and, like, the wingspan I don't think adds up either.
And I've seen pictures of the heron, like, they got stick legs.
Yeah, they're not very person-like.
No, and, like, they've got a very distinct, crane silhouette.
Yeah.
Is very, like, you've got the bulb, you've got the neck, you got the head and the beak, and then you've got the stick legs.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I didn't bring up earlier, is that Mothman, a lot of sightings, they kind of report him as to having, like, almost no neck at all. Like,
yeah,
it's just kind of like the head is on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Some people even, like, kind of compare it to like an owl.
I was just gonna say that sounds very owl-esque.
That is another theory, is that it's like a misidentified large owl. But I don't know. Like, people are describing his build, and like I don't.
And
like,
you would hear wing flaps with a big ass owl.
Yeah,
motherfuckers are loud.
Well, maybe not though. Owls are actually silent flyers.
Are you serious? That's kind of terrifying. I didn't know
that's
that.
like that's why they're such good predators, because they're active at night and they fly very quietly. Like their wings, their feathers, or something in the feathers that like muffle the sound. So like an animal that an owl preys on can just get snatched up and not even hear it coming.
Oh my god, that would explain a lot actually if it is an owl.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain the red eyes.
That's
Owls
true.
have like a yellowish eye, don't they? Like
I'm sure it depends on the kind of owl.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever seen an owl with red eyes.
Yeah,
they're like green or yellow or something like that. All the owls I've seen.
Yeah, unless it's like some kind of albinoism, but then its feathers would presumably be like bright white.
You would think. There are some people that hypothesize that this is a crane, but it was deformed or mutated because of the TNT area that it was inhabiting. That area is known to like have contaminated the wildlife, like kind of like almost radiation like, because it's where bombs and shit were being made.
Some Fallout shit.
A little bit, yeah. But yeah, like apparently they just kind of like covered it with dirt and thought that that was going to be good, and obviously it's not.
No, because then you probably would have all those, substances going into the soil and shit. I don't know what TNT is made of. I would assume it's mostly just gunpowder, is it not?
Yeah, but they also made like other bombs and stuff there too.
Oh.
It wasn't, they just called it the TNT area because it sounds cool, I guess.
Oh, okay, it's just kind of a colloquial term.
Yeah. So there is a possibility that maybe Mothman is like some kind of mutated owl or something, or bat, or weird crane that somehow got swole. I don't know.
But he's huge.
He is.
A genetic mutation, I mean, sure, it can change size, but size also depends on like a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Like, for something to be that big.
Yeah.
I believe me, I'm no geneticist or anything, but that just sounds...
No, it sounds right to me too. I'm not a geneticist either. Is he an alien? That's another theory.
Is he an alien?
Yeah, with Indrid Cold, the spacecrafts, like, people apparently started seeing spacecrafts a lot around that time. And, of course, everyone's favorite, the Men in Black.
Wait, how did the Men in Black fit into this?
A lot of people reported after seeing the Mothman being visited by men in black suits.
No shit.
Yes, there is shit there.
There is the Men in Black shit there.
Yeah. So is it an alien creature? Like, that's another thing, like, that's just like a big theory that I've seen a lot of people talk about is, like, there's so much spacecraft around that time in that area, especially in general.
And we're talking about people seeing Men in Black around the Point Pleasant?
Yes.
Okay.
So they would see the Mothman and, like, report their witnesses, like, their eyewitness accounts and stuff, and then apparently a couple days later or whatever, these men in black suits roll up and like start questioning them or whatever.
Bro, something was going on in Point Pleasant.
Something. Another theory, is it a Scottish-Irish banshee like creature?
Oh.
So filmmaker Seth Breedlove?
That is a very suggestive last name.
Very. Spoke with a man named Eric Douglas by Zoom to discuss the Mothman Legacy documentary. And Eric asked him, like, what made you want to do this movie? And Seth says that he was having a conversation with someone about the Mothman story, and they pointed out some similarities between Mothman and other winged creatures throughout mythology, and they made a connection between the Mothman and the banshees from Irish and Scottish folklore, which are basically creatures that are heralds of some sort of oncoming death or disaster, and typically have glowing red eyes.
Oh, interesting.
If you know anything about the banshee, it's probably that banshee scream that's so, like, commonly known.
That's what I know.
These, like, flying... banshees are usually female, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll fly around at night, and they supposedly, they have wings and glowing red eyes, or, some kind of, like, very hypnotic looking eyes, or creepy eyes, and they'll scream. And that's supposed to be, like, them warning people of, like, imminent death or doom or some kind of disaster. And that's very similar to the Mothman, especially when you look at Germany.
Yeah.
With the miners.
Very similar, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The last theory that I have found that I thought was very interesting is the Mothman part of a Native American curse.
Interesting.
So in 1774,
a
few tribes, including the Mingo and the Shawnee tribes, tried to fight off American settlers from their territory in Point Pleasant.
No shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a big battle. On October 10th, a huge battle started, led by Chief Cornstalk against 1,000 militia, led by Colonel Andrew Lewis. The Shawnee were outnumbered, and Cornstalk eventually had to forfeit and sign a treaty. They were outnumbered like 2-1. So he was like, okay, we lost. Like, that's it. And apparently, 3 years later, Cornstalk and his son traveled to Fort Randolph, which is, again, in that Point Pleasant area, and were trying to tell the captain, a guy by the name of Matthew Arbuckle, that the colonists were violating the treaty and that the British were trying to recruit members of the tribe to fight the Americans. So he was trying to be like, hey, for one, there's some of your guys aren't acknowledging the treaty and they're like hurting my people.
Of course.
But also, yeah, of course.
Of course.
But also, the British are trying to like recruit us to like wage war with you guys. So like, you know, you might want to like look into that or something. He was like actually trying to be a friend to them. But apparently they were placed under arrest. Surprisingly, though, they were well treated. The reason for the arrest... They were well treated? Yes, they were very well treated, apparently.
Okay.
And the reason for the arrest was... And there was a couple other Shawnee tribe members there. Was that they were kind of being used as, like, protection. The captain figured that the tribe wouldn't attack the fort if he had these people prisoner. And a few weeks later, however, an American was killed by some natives, but nobody knows why or which tribe did it. But, of course, this... sparked a militia who stormed the fort's jail, threw the captain to the side pretty much, and just executed all of the tribe members.
Oh my god.
But before Cornstalk died, he supposedly cursed the land. There was again, in one of the videos that I'm going to link, they actually have the whole little speech that he said, where he basically was like, I come to you as a friend, and you know, this is what you're doing to me. So now this place is fucking cursed, basically. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But,
of course.
But yeah, so is he a strange bird, mutated or identified? Is he an alien? Is he a curse? Is he a fucking banshee-like creature? What is the Mothman?
God, dude. That's insane. That is a very interesting, like, the story of Chief Cornstalk and all that.
Yeah.
That's almost like a fucking movie right there.
It is.
I've seen scenes like that.
Yeah. The weird thing, like, the thing about the Native American one, I'm not saying that it's not a possibility, but I feel like anywhere in America, if some weird shit's happening, you can almost always pull it back to natives. Always. Because, I mean, that's who was here before we came here, you know?
Yeah, and we fucked them up. I think that's like just a often,
I think it's just white guilt.
Yeah, I think it's just often white guilt, yeah.
I think it's just white guilt. They're just kind of anytime something weird's happening, you can trace back, you know, to
Indian burial ground,
or just like, this was a spot where the Native Americans lived and now we're living on their graves, or like, you know, was a spot where they performed rituals, and of course we don't understand Native American rituals, so it must be evil or cursed or something.
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
So what do you think now? I went down this rabbit hole. I had a great time. Talking about this too.
I had a great time talking about it with you. There's a lot here I didn't know. I had no idea that Mothman has been sighted in so many different places.
Me neither.
And that there's a through line of, like, very similar physical appearances, but with, like, some variations. The pinchers.
Yeah, that's the main variation that I've, like, I looked at, was, like, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
That's what makes me feel like maybe it's a different creature. Or what if it is still the same Mothman, but he got into a weird accident and lost some fingers? I don't know. He seems like a busy motherfucker.
Yeah, motherfucker. Like, he's living his best life. He's traveling.
He's traveling.
He's helping people out. He's following pretty ladies. Like, Mothman living his best life. Maybe he's a bit too stalkery and needs to chill out, but...
I mean, he's not a person, so
yeah.
he doesn't understand our love languages or whatever.
Yeah.
So you wrote some stuff down. Is there anything, like, in particular that stuck out to you, or that you wanted to...
Well, what my second note actually is the variations in appearance, because that's just such an interesting detail. Because like, you just got these main through lines, but I'm very curious. Like, what do you think? Do you think he's a physical entity, or do you think he's like spiritual?
Because I don't know.
If he's seen like climbing bridges, then that feels like I feel like I would point more towards a physical like being. But if he's also like flying around silently without flapping his wings in so many of these instances, and you've got all this like seemingly electromagnetic interference happening with different electrical devices, and then you've got like this hypnotic quality with his eyes, like maybe he's somewhere in between, like I don't know.
That also is what kind of like weirdly enough points me almost towards like he's like an alien like creature.
Yeah, that does sound very similar to a lot of like UFO and alien.
And like he's been seen a lot, you know, in that Point Pleasant area around that time. There was a lot of like alien craft like sightings.
Yeah.
Especially with that Indrid Cold motherfucker, whoever the hell he is.
I'd like to dive more into Indrid Cold. I don't think there's a ton about him out there.
Oh, I've heard there is.
Oh, is there?
I've heard there is.
Maybe that's an upcoming episode then.
That's definitely an upcoming episode, because that's something I didn't even know about. Yeah. And now I'm like, who?
Who that actually know? I also find it interesting that he often, but not always, is seen around tragedy.
Yeah, that is like the weirdest thing. The main like parts where he doesn't seem to be linked to tragedy is in the Chicago area, or at least maybe the tragedy hasn't happened yet. Who the fuck knows?
That's a terrifying thought.
That's horrifying to think about. But then also the war, the Russia versus Turkey war. But then again, like I said, war is kind of a tragedy, and, you know, like a lot of people lose their lives in wars and stuff, so... Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like he's just, like, there to be seen, and then, like, people, you know, make that connection of, oh, there's Mothman, something bad's gonna happen. Like, in that situation, like, where they shot their own people, right?
They were, apparently they were shooting at their own people. The Turkish were trying to retreat back to their area after seeing the Mothman flying around, because that's spooky as hell.
Yeah.
And then their people thought that they were Russians trying to do essentially what the Turkish was trying to do to the Russians.
Right.
Maybe Mothman was there to thwart that. Maybe he was taking sides. He was with Russia.
Oh yeah, that could be too. Mother Russia. Mothman approved. But that was not great.
Horrible.
That was terrible. I'm
keeping
sorry.
it in.
No. But maybe he's got a sick sense of humor. Maybe he was like, I'm gonna warn you about the tragedy I'm about to cause right now.
Maybe. I don't know. The one that really, really like got me was the German one. The miners.
Yeah, that one's insane.
That's him actively saving 36 people's lives.
Yeah.
Like,
Mothman
if he wasn't there,
people.
Yeah, he's a friend of the blue collar folks. If he wasn't there, those 36 people would have been crushed or like starved to death or whatever. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And that's like also, you know, we were talking about the sounds and stuff that he makes, that shriek. Like, that's where he got that name, the Feuberg or Fireberg Shrieker or whatever.
Yeah. That's such a cool story, because there's so many people. He's not like far away in the sky. He's like right in front of them in a fucking cave.
Right there.
And they're all having the same reaction.
Yeah, they all see this and they all nope the hell out of there and start like doing other shit so that they're still technically working. But they're like, no, I'm not going in the mines yet. And they kept, like I said, they were like, you know, nudging everyone else. Like, people were nudging each other, being like, hey, go see if that thing is still there.
Yeah. And I find it interesting, too, that, especially in that story, he seems to have this, like, level of consciousness and, like, agency. I think that's partly because he's not always there in, like, tragic events. He just is kind of doing shit, but also warning people about tragedy.
Yeah. The picture of him on the bridge that was taken a week before the bridge collapsed is a very interesting picture. It like I said, it is black and white, or I don't think I said that, but it was in the 60s, so it is kind of a black and white picture.
Mm-hmm.
But like you can see he's there. Like it's still pretty fucking clear he's there.
And faking photos was a lot more difficult back then.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't impossible, but
there was no Photoshop.
No.
If they wanted to fake that, I feel like they would have had to put a man in a suit with like giant wings or something, and like have him climb the bridge, which seems dangerous as all hell. So
yeah, because even if you do, which my understanding of old antique photography is limited to 0, but as I understand it, it would be a double exposure, right? Because you would take the picture of the sky, and then why would you need to do that if you've already got the practical effects? I don't know, but that'd be quite an undertaking, and
if
not
you
a
didn't
cheap
do
one.
it practically, I feel like it would have to be like some kind of like exposing the picture and then like making that image onto the photo and then taking the photo and like, because I mean they made the Invisible Man in like the 30s or 40s or something, whenever that was made.
Really?
And that was like, oh yeah, the OG Invisible Man, and that was like a marvel of technology, like of what film can do.
Yeah, but that's also a whole film studio.
Yeah, that's a film studio, and they're like really like taking a video of this and then taking a video of that and taking a video of this and then cramming it all together somehow to like make him look invisible in those shots.
Wow, props to them. I bet that was fucking difficult.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's the Mothman. Do you have any other?
I do have one more idea.
Okay.
I know this episode is running a bit long.
No, it's fine. I love it.
Me too. I do watch a YouTuber named Armored Skeptic who has a series called Tell Me More.
Yes.
And he talks about Mothman.
Okay.
And I actually, a lot of the names like from the eyewitness accounts were like ringing a bell because of that. It was a while ago. I think 1 or 2 years ago at least that he had the Mothman episodes, but he talked about, I don't know how much I believe it, but it is kind of a grounded explanation for at least what was happening around Point Pleasant, but the fact that there's like so much around the world,
especially now in Chicago.
Yeah, recent in Chicago. That's crazy. But if I recall correctly, I haven't watched the videos in quite some time, but he was talking about how I think his theory, or at least one of the explanations he puts out, is that this was, if I'm not mistaken, around the time of the Cold War in the 60s in Point Pleasant, and you got all this weird like electromagnetic interference and all this like seeming electronic phenomena happening,
especially with TVs and phones.
Yeah, with TVs and phones. His idea was that it was like some kind of military technology being tested in the area, which would also help to explain like why the Men in Black were sighted around a lot of these, because the Men in Black, a lot of people feel like are disinfo agents, as in like they're put out by like government and military bodies to reinforce the idea that it is something paranormal, to bring attention away from their military testing. I
haven't thought about that.
Yeah, so like, the idea is to be like, yeah, it was aliens, yeah, it was Mothman, so that the information about experimental technology doesn't get out to the enemy,
right? Okay.
Or to the public before it's like, before it's ready, before it's tested, before they use it for what they're trying to develop it for, because technological warfare is all about who has the newest leg up,
right?
And they do not want that information to get out, because once it does, it's just a race. Which I mean, I'm sure it always is, but his idea was that Mothman is seen not flapping his wings with glowing red eyes, because he's got like
goggles and
shit. Like bright red goggles, which I think are like supposed to be laser resistant or like IR resistant or something. But
usually goggles like that I would imagine, for one, serve as a purpose to protect the eyes from like winds and also
of course.
bugs or whatever, because if you're flying that fast, that would be bad.
Yeah, but specifically red ones.
Yeah, and I think that's like infrared vision as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because like if you're doing nighttime operations,
right,
you're gonna have to see.
True. Which is crazy to think that if that is the case, we're experimenting with that stuff as early as the 60s.
Well, I mean, there are talks about like how the military and the government and stuff is always like 30 years ahead of us or something.
That's true. Yeah, military technology is always like, yeah, I think it is 30 years more advanced than consumer technology.
I think that's a cool theory. My problem then is like, it's been over 30 years. Where is these Mothman battle suits? Did they just not work out? Like, what happened to them? But also, like, I mean, in the 60s, that like, we're talking about someone flying solo by themselves using what, like a jetpack or something, like going 100 miles an hour.
That was the idea. Yeah.
Like, oh man, I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah.
And like, also, like, why would he be like chasing these people like this? And like, you feel like he would want to like maybe not have the attention brought onto himself if that's the case.
If you're sending out Men in Black looking disinfo agents to try and draw attention away, why would you fucking chase a car?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's just like, testing it out now. Like,
yeah, he's just a rogue agent.
he's just having a good time. Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of theories.
Yeah, I think that was a good attempt to ground Mothman in, more scientific terms, but at the same time, it doesn't explain everything.
No, it doesn't. And like, especially, we talked about, like I said, Germany. We talked about the Chernobyl incidents. We talked about, it wasn't called Mothman in Chernobyl. I think it was called like the dark bird or dark bat or something like that, or something. It was something weird. It was like
the Dark
Knight. Yeah, the Dark Knight is Batman. But yeah, he was spotted there. The Mexican swine flu outbreak, like, he's getting around. Like,
yeah, the Mexican swine flu outbreak. I didn't ask more about that, but what do you remember about that? Because that's an interesting one too.
Honestly, not a lot. It was just a part of one of the videos that I was watching, and he was kind of just glancing over these topics. Like, he talked a little bit about the Chernobyl one with, people seeing the Mothman and then like having the weird dreams and the phone calls that weren't phone calls, basically.
Okay.
He didn't really talk about the swine flu outbreak other than just there were reports of people seeing this big black looking creature, with wings flying around, and then people started getting sick.
Huh.
You ever get the swine flu?
No.
I did.
Not that I know of. You got the swine flu?
I got it once.
Really?
Yeah, I was laid up in bed for like 2 weeks.
Oh my god.
Or like a week and a half or something. It was bad.
Shit, dude.
It sucked.
Yeah, that sounds shitty.
Yeah, that's our first episode of the podcast. It looks like we're going on an hour and a half. I didn't mean for it to be this long. I might try to cut some stuff, but honestly, this was just so much fun. And like I said, this is our first episode, first ever time doing a podcast. So sorry for the tripping of words and the long length of it all, but
there were nerves involved.
There were nerves involved, but also, yeah, just a lot of information. And I feel like that's going to be a common theme, is us finding way more information than we ever thought we would find about these creatures.
More than we know what to do with.
Yeah, for sure. So do you know what your next episode is going to be, or are you still kind of debating? I know you were talking about skinwalkers.
Yeah, I would love to do skinwalkers. I would absolutely love to do skinwalkers because I've kind of dipped my toes in the research already. And what I've found is incredibly interesting, and I would love to dive deeper into it. Like, legit, like I said, my only concern... Well, I guess I have two concerns. One is, not being a racist piece of shit on accident. And two would be just... First-hand accounts are very scarce, if not non-existent.
Fair.
Native Americans, from what I hear, the tribes that have myths about skinwalkers believe that talking about skinwalkers attracts them.
Right. I've heard of that as well.
Yeah. So a lot of the information that is out there is like people that were lucky enough to...
Or unlucky.
Yeah. Well, it's people that were lucky enough to get close to the tribes. Would hear, like, they would record the stories of, the tribesmen and elders and stuff talking about, some of them are firsthand like experiences that they like believed that there was somebody in the tribe that was a skinwalker, or they just talked about, you know, their beliefs about them in general. But yeah, if there's enough research that I can find that is like close to, if not firsthand, that'll definitely be the next episode.
All right. Do you have a fallback plan if that doesn't work out, or?
Nope.
Okay. Well, awesome. All right. So that was our first episode. My name is Finn, the fish.
And my name is Kirrianna, the fox.
We're going to have, like I said, all of my sources are going to be in the description of this, as well as a couple of social medias. I'm going to have my YouTube and my Twitter. My YouTube is kind of starting up. I'm planning on doing a bunch of like horror themed ASMRs. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, go ahead and check that out. If not, I'm going to have my Twitter where I'm going to be posting about video uploads, podcasts and stuff like that. And also just, shit post or whatever it is. And then I'm also going to have Kirrianna's, socials. You're kind of starting to get stuff set up, right?
Yeah, I haven't really known where I wanted to go, so I haven't done anything yet. Really, I've got socials set up. I just don't know what I want to do with them yet. I definitely want to do some kind of art and some kind of something, but I don't know what.
Oh yeah, speaking of which, the intro and outro music is done by myself. I am working on potentially getting some music started up too, and I'll probably have like a SoundCloud or something for that. And the logo, this adorable, amazing logo, was drawn by Kirrianna. And you like have any idea about like if you're wanting to do commissions maybe in the future, like opening up some commissions? Or
I would love to do commissions in the near future. The only reason I haven't tried to start is because I feel like I need to have like a portfolio of examples for people to look at before they commission me.
Well, you definitely have a few.
I've got a few. I just need to figure out where I want to put them. I'm probably going to put them on Twitter. Eventually, I'm going to try to set my own website up. That's what I think I'm going to do. But yeah, I would love to do commissions.
Awesome. So this has been the Fox and the Fish podcast. Everything spooky, creepy, and horrifying. And we're going to be trying to do one of these at least every 2 weeks. So see you guys later.